Podjetja imajo ključno vlogo pri zelenem prehodu, so prepričani v pobudi Climate Governance Initiative kot pomoč direktorjem upravnih odborov podjetij pri pravočasnem in odločnem ukrepanju glede podnebnih sprememb in prehoda v podnebno nevtralnost, so v omenjeni pobudi razvili komplet orodij, tako imenovane chapterje. V sodelovanju z Britansko-slovensko gospodarsko zbornico pripravljajo v pobudi predstavitev Chapter Zero Slovenija. Dogodek bo 18. aprila. O Chapter Zero bo za Bloomberg Adria govorila predsednica pobude Climate Governance Initiative Karina Litvack, ki jo pozdravljam v londonskem studiu Bloomberga. Welcome, Mrs. Litvack.
Thank you very much.
So, Climate Governance Initiative's aim is to mobilize boards to accelerate the net zero transition. How does this look in chapters across the world?
Well, first of all, the chapter network has really expanded now. We're in over 50 countries. And of course, as your question implies, there are some pretty significant variations in the attitudes, readiness, competencies, and so forth. In some countries, there's a real awareness and there are the beginnings of real competence. In others, it's more of a challenge. But typically what we find is the types of directors who voluntarily choose to join an initiative like this are convinced. Their challenge is knowing how to do it and what to do, not whether or not they need to do it.
What is the usual response of board members in other chapters? How aware are they about the necessity of ESG?
Well, typically when it comes in particular to climate change, there's a reaction that is, this is government's job. Directors and companies are more comfortable with saying we should worry about health and safety, or we should worry about spills and, environmental management. But when it comes to something as big and systemic and complex as climate, there's a tendency to say, actually, government should just set some clear rules and then we'll comply. And what we have found is that that's necessary. Government has to take a leadership role, but it's not sufficient. And business also has to take a leadership role, and in many cases needs to push government to be more ambitious.
Is there a difference in awareness between Eastern and Western Europe? It's generally known that companies that take ESG into account are more attractive to investors and have better results?
That's definitely the case. I remember prior to my life now as a director, I used to work in the investment management business. And one rule of thumb that we used when we were investing in Eastern Europe, for example, was if the company had been a client of the EBRD, then we knew that somebody else had already been all over them and pushed them to adopt better ESG practices, so they were readier for the public markets. So generally speaking, a company that is well-run, prudently run, efficiently run with respect to environmental, social, and of course corporate governance concerns, the safer the investment is for investors.
EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive will take action in 2025. Do you expect it to be effective? Is it enough to meet zero transition goals?
Well, the CSRD, Corporate Social Sustainable Reporting, is extremely ambitious, far more ambitious than what is being contemplated in other jurisdictions. So if anything, the conversation is, are we doing too much? Our view is that it is doing an excellent job at raising awareness and effectively compelling companies and their directors to be transparent about what they're doing. And I've seen this in my own company. I'm on the board of an oil and gas company. When the first version was announced in 2014 and took effect in 2017, and we as directors were personally liable for any material errors or omissions, I guarantee you that we paid much closer attention to the quality of the information that we were disclosing, which previously we didn't have to. But secondly, if the information we were disclosing was disappointing in any way, then we took an interest in ensuring that our systems on the environmental and social side were improved to be as reliable, as robust as what we had on the financial side. So I think the CSRD altogether is a really positive thing.
Okay, critics on the other side say that ESG will cause European economies to be less competitive compared to others. What is your answer to these critics?
That is an objection that people make all the time whenever there's any tightening of regulation. So less competitive, it's not like people are going to stop selling into the European market. And if they have a significant business here, whether or not they're listed in this region or headquartered in this region. Any international company that has significant operations in the EU will be affected by the CSRD, so that will level the playing field already with respect to competition occurring within the EU 27. I'm not particularly worried about companies becoming less competitive because, quite frankly, over the medium to long term, what makes us competitive is our resilience to a net zero world. You don't want to be that company whose business is affected by drought or floods or disruptive changes in technology that leave them unprepared to compete. So these are ultimately to the good of the companies and their investors.
Okay, Mrs. Litvack, thank you for speaking for Bloomberg Adria and all the success with Chapter Zero and representation of Chapter Zero Slovenia in April. Hvala lepa.